The day I told my kids I needed help paying the electricity bill, they smirked and said, "Figure it out, Mom." But what they didn't know was that I'd gained full control of the family trust that morning, and what I did next changed everything. My name is Linda Patterson, and I'm 72 years old. Before I tell you what happened, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city and state in the comments. I love connecting with all of you. Now, let me take you back to that morning, because what my children said to me that day was the culmination of years of disrespect. But it was also the day everything shifted in my favor. It started on a Tuesday morning in March. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the same oak table where I'd served thousands of meals to my family over the decades. The electricity bill sat in front of me, $247. Not a fortune, but it might as well have been. You see, I'd spent the last 6 years living on a fixed income that barely covered my basic needs. My husband Thomas had passed away 6 years ago, leaving behind what I thought was a comfortable estate. But the reality was far more complicated than I could have imagined. Thomas had been a successful commercial real estate developer. Over 40 years of marriage, he'd built up a substantial portfolio of properties and investments. When he died, everything was placed into a family trust. The trustee was supposed to manage it for the benefit of our family, specifically to provide for me in my retirement, and eventually pass to our 3 children, Michael, 45, Sarah, 42, and David, 39. But here's what I didn't know when Thomas died. The trustee he'd appointed was his business partner, Frank Morrison, and Frank had his own ideas about how that money should be managed. For the first year after Thomas's death, I received regular monthly distributions. Nothing extravagant. $5,000 a month, which was enough to cover my mortgage, utilities, groceries, and medical expenses with a little left over. I thought that was how it would continue. Then the distributions started getting smaller. First $4,500, then $4,000. Frank always had an excuse. "Market's down, Linda. Had some unexpected expenses on the properties. Trust needs to maintain reserves." By the 3rd year, I was getting $3,000 a month. By the 5th year, $2,500. And for the past year, I'd been receiving just $2,000 monthly. My mortgage alone was $1,500. That left $500 for everything else. I started cutting corners everywhere. I stopped buying new clothes. The ones I had developed holes and worn spots. But I learned to mend them, sitting at my kitchen table with needle and thread like women did during the Depression. I ate the same simple meals: oatmeal for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta or rice dishes for dinner. I kept the thermostat at 62 in winter, wearing layers of sweaters until I looked like a walking closet. In summer, I'd set it to 80 and sit by open windows, hoping for a breeze. I canceled my cable, my newspaper subscription, my book club membership. I stopped going to the hair salon where I'd been a customer for 20 years and started cutting my own hair in front of the bathroom mirror, the results uneven and amateurish. I gave up the small luxuries that had made life pleasant. No more occasional dinners out with friends. I started declining invitations, making up excuses until eventually the invitations stopped coming. The weekly flowers I used to buy at the farmer's market, just $5 for a small bouquet that brightened my kitchen, gone. The mystery novels I loved to read, I couldn't afford new ones, so I reread the same old paperbacks until the pages fell apart. I stopped contributing to the church collection plate, which filled me with shame. I couldn't afford birthday gifts for my grandchildren, so I baked cookies and wrote heartfelt cards, pretending that was my choice rather than my only option. I learned which grocery stores had the best sales, clipping coupons like my mother had done in the 1950s. I ate a lot of rice and beans, a lot of peanut butter sandwiches. I bought store-brand everything. I rationed my medication, taking pills every other day instead of daily, because I couldn't afford the co-pays for refills. My arthritis got worse without consistent treatment. But what choice did I have? But it still wasn't enough. Medical bills were piling up. I needed a root canal but couldn't afford it, so I lived with the pain, taking over-the-counter painkillers and praying the infection wouldn't get worse. My car needed new brakes. I could hear them grinding every time I stopped, but the mechanic quoted me $800, so I just drove carefully and prayed a lot. The roof was leaking in 2 places. I put buckets down when it rained. The washing machine made terrible noises but still worked, so I ignored it. And now I was short on the electricity bill. So that Tuesday morning, I decided to call my children. I called Michael first. He's a corporate attorney in Manhattan, lives in a penthouse on the Upper East Side. His wife, Jennifer, doesn't work. She spends her days shopping and lunching with her friends. They take 3 or 4 luxury vacations a year. "Mom, it's 7:30 in the morning," he said when he answered. "I'm getting ready for work." "I know, honey. I'm sorry, but I have a problem. My electricity bill is due today and I'm a bit short. I was wondering if you could help me out with $250. I'll pay you back next month when—" "Mom!" His voice was sharp. "We've talked about this. You need to learn to budget better. Jennifer and I have our own expenses. The kids' private school tuition is due. We can't keep bailing you out." "Keep bailing me out?" I'd asked him for money exactly twice before in 6 years. Once when my refrigerator died and once when I had an emergency dental expense. "Michael, I'm not asking for much, just enough to—" "I have to go, Mom. Talk to Frank about increasing your distribution. That's what the trust is for." He hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone. Then I called Sarah. Sarah lives in Connecticut with her husband, Rick, and their 2 teenagers. Rick is a hedge fund manager. They have a summer house in the Hamptons and a ski condo in Vermont. Sarah herself runs a small interior design business. More of a hobby, really, that gives her something to do between yoga classes and charity galas. "Hi, Mom," she answered, sounding distracted. "Can this be quick? I'm meeting a client in 20 minutes. "Sarah, I need to ask you for a small favor. I'm having trouble with my electricity bill this month, and I wondered if—" "Oh my God, Mom. Again? You know Rick and I are in the middle of renovating the Hamptons house. Do you have any idea what that costs? We just spent $40,000 on the kitchen alone." My throat tightened. "I'm not asking for $40,000, sweetheart. I need $250. It's the principle, Mom. You have income from the trust. You need to live within your means. Maybe you should sell that big house and move into a smaller apartment. That would solve a lot of your problems." "Sell my house?" "The house Thomas and I bought when we were newlyweds. The house where we'd raised our children, where every room held memories of birthday parties and holiday dinners and quiet Sunday mornings." "I'll figure it out," I said quietly. "Good. Look, I really have to run. Love you." She was gone. I had one more option. David, my youngest. He'd always been the sweetest of my children, the most attentive when his father died. Surely he would help. David is a successful tech entrepreneur in Seattle. He'd sold his startup 2 years ago for $42 million. He and his wife, Amanda, live in a modern mansion overlooking Lake Washington. "Hey, Mom." He sounded cheerful when he answered. "What's up?" I explained the situation, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mom, I love you, but here's the thing. Amanda and I just talked to our financial advisor about this exact issue. We give a lot to charity. You know that. We donate over $1 million a year. But he said we need to be more strategic. We can't just give money to everyone who asks, even family. It sets a bad precedent." "A bad precedent?" My voice cracked. "David, I'm your mother. I'm not everyone who asks. I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you and your siblings." "I know, Mom, and we appreciate that. But you made choices in your life, and we're making choices in ours. You chose to be a stay-at-home mom instead of building a career. That was your decision. We can't be responsible for the consequences of your choices." The consequences of my choices. As if raising 3 children, supporting my husband's career, managing our household, and volunteering in the community for 40 years wasn't valuable work. "I understand," I whispered. "Goodbye, David." I set the phone down on the oak table. My hands were trembling. I looked at the electricity bill, then at my checkbook. I had $417 in my account. If I paid the bill, I'd have $170 left for food and gas until the next trust distribution in 2 weeks. That's when I heard the doorbell. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I wiped my eyes and went to answer it. Standing on my porch was a man in an expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He was about 60, with silver hair and kind eyes. Mrs. Patterson? Linda Patterson? Yes. My name is Robert Chen. I'm an attorney. May I come in? I have some important information regarding your late husband's estate. I showed him into the living room. He declined my offer of coffee and got straight to business. Mrs. Patterson, I apologize for arriving unannounced, but I've been trying to reach you for several weeks. Your phone number wasn't listed, and my letters were returned. Letters? I haven't received any letters from you. He frowned. They were sent to this address, but that's not important right now. What is important is that I have information you need to hear. I was your late husband's attorney, not Frank Morrison. Frank handled Thomas's real estate transactions. I handled his estate planning and trust administration. My heart started beating faster. I don't understand. Frank has been managing everything. That's the problem, Mrs. Patterson. Frank Morrison should not be serving as trustee. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder thick with documents. When Thomas created his trust, he named Frank as the initial trustee. However, the trust document included specific provisions. The trust was designed to provide for you during your lifetime. The assets were meant to support you comfortably. Only after your death would the remainder pass to your children. That's standard estate planning for someone in Thomas's position. But Frank has been reducing my distributions every year. He says the trust performance has been poor, that expenses are high, that I know what Frank has been saying, and Mrs. Patterson, it's all lies. Robert's voice was firm, steady. I've been investigating the trust for the past year after receiving concerning information from one of Thomas's former employees who felt something wasn't right. That person had the courage to contact me, and I'm grateful they did. He spread the documents across my coffee table. Bank statements, investment reports, spreadsheets covered with numbers. Mrs. Patterson, Frank has been mismanaging the trust significantly. The trust currently holds approximately $8 million in assets. Let me repeat that. $8 million. Based on a conservative distribution rate of just 2.5% annually, you should be receiving at minimum $15,000 per month. A more reasonable rate would be 3 to 4%, which would mean $20,000 to $25,000 per month. My head spun. $8 million? $15,000 a month? But I've been getting $2,000. I know, and it's worse than that. Frank has been taking excessive trustee fees, far more than is reasonable or permitted under the trust document. He's been using trust assets for his own benefit. He's made risky investments without proper authorization. Mrs. Patterson, he's been stealing from you. I felt dizzy. I gripped the arm of my chair. Robert continued, his voice gentle but urgent. I filed a petition with the probate court to remove Frank as trustee. The hearing was this morning, just 2 hours ago. I tried to reach you yesterday to let you know, but couldn't find a current phone number. This morning? What happened? He smiled for the first time. The judge reviewed the evidence I presented. Bank statements, investment records, documentation of excessive fees. It was clear-cut. Frank Morrison has been removed as trustee effective immediately, and Mrs. Patterson, the judge appointed you as the successor trustee. As of this morning, you have full control of the family trust. The room seemed to tilt. What? You are now the trustee. You control all the assets. You decide the distributions. You have complete authority over every penny in that trust. He pulled out more documents. Here are the current account statements. Here are the access codes and passwords for the online accounts. Here's the contact information for the financial advisor who manages the investment portfolio. And here, he handed me a checkbook, is the trust checking account. There's currently $473,000 in that account. I stared at the checkbook in my hands. $473,000. There's more, Robert said. Frank must return the excessive fees he's taken over the past 5 years. We estimate that's approximately $600,000. We'll pursue that through the courts. Additionally, you can now set your own monthly distribution at a reasonable level. I'd recommend $15,000 per month to start, though you could go higher if needed. I couldn't speak. 6 years of struggling. 6 years of eating cheap pasta and wearing worn-out shoes and keeping my house cold in winter. 6 years of being told there wasn't enough money, and all along, there were millions. Robert stood up. I'll let you process all of this. Here's my card. Call me anytime if you have questions. The financial advisor's name is Patricia Reynolds. She's excellent, and she had no idea Frank was stealing from you. She'll help you manage everything going forward. Congratulations, Mrs. Patterson, and I'm deeply sorry for what you've been through. After he left, I sat on my couch for a long time, holding that checkbook. Then I looked at my phone. I had 3 missed calls, one from each of my children. They'd talked to each other, apparently. Coordinated their response to their desperate mother. I listened to the voicemails. Michael. Mom, Sarah told me you called her too. Look, we all agreed. You need to stop asking us for money. It's getting embarrassing. We have our own lives and responsibilities. Figure it out. Sarah. Mom, I talked to the boys. We think you're being manipulative, calling each of us separately, trying to play us against each other. It needs to stop. You're an adult. Act like one. David. Hey, Mom. So Amanda had a good idea. Maybe we should all sit down and help you create a budget. You clearly need to learn some financial literacy. Let us know when works for you and we can come over and go through your expenses line by line. We'll help you figure out where you're wasting money. Figure it out. Stop being manipulative. Learn financial literacy. I called my children. I asked them to come over that afternoon for a family meeting. I said it was urgent. They all agreed, though I could hear the annoyance in their voices. They thought I was going to beg again. They were preparing to lecture me about responsibility and boundaries. They had no idea what was coming. At 3 o'clock, they arrived. Michael came straight from his law office, still in his 3-piece suit, checking his watch as if he had somewhere more important to be. Sarah wore designer yoga pants and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly food budget. I recognized the label from a magazine I'd seen at the doctor's office. David showed up in jeans and a hoodie, the casual uniform of the tech millionaire, driving a Tesla that cost more than I'd spent on anything in the past 5 years. They sat in my living room, the same room where I'd read them bedtime stories and helped with homework projects the night before they were due, the same room where I'd nursed them through childhood illnesses, holding cool washcloths to fevered foreheads, the same room where we'd celebrated Christmas mornings and birthday parties and graduations. They looked at me with expressions somewhere between impatience and pity, like they were humoring a difficult elderly relative who didn't quite understand how the world worked. Michael spoke first, pulling his phone out and setting it face down on the coffee table, his signal that this conversation had a time limit. Okay, Mom, we're all here. What's this urgent family meeting about? I have a conference call at 4:30. I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. This morning, each of you refused to help me pay my electricity bill. $247. Not a lot of money, really. Less than you spend on a nice dinner out. Less than a single designer handbag. Less than one night in a hotel on your vacations. But to me, it was everything. It was keeping the lights on. It was maintaining the last shred of dignity I had left. And you all told me in different ways to figure it out myself. Mom, Sarah started, her voice uncertain, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. I need to say this. I looked at each of them in turn. Michael, you said I need to learn to budget better, and that you couldn't keep bailing me out, even though I'd only asked you for help twice in 6 years. Twice. Once when my refrigerator died and I had no way to store food. Once when I had an emergency dental infection that required immediate treatment. That's not a pattern of dependency. That's a mother asking her successful son for help in genuine emergencies. Michael opened his mouth to speak, but I continued. Sarah, you told me I should sell my home and that you couldn't help me because you're renovating your summer house. Your summer house. A luxury home you visit maybe 6 weeks out of the year while your mother was struggling to afford electricity in the only home she has. And David, my voice caught slightly. You told me that I need to face the consequences of my choices. The choice to raise you instead of building a career. David's face had gone pale. The choice to raise you, I repeated. as if the 40 years I spent caring for this family, supporting your father's career, volunteering at your schools, driving you to soccer practice and piano lessons and birthday parties, as if all of that was worthless, as if being your mother was a foolish decision I'm now being punished for. They had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. What none of you knew is that this morning I also had a visit from an attorney. Your father's attorney. The real one, not Frank Morrison. Now I had their attention. It turns out that Frank has been stealing from the family trust for years, taking excessive fees, using trust money for his own purposes, deliberately minimizing my distributions. The trust actually contains $8 million. I should have been receiving $15,000 to $20,000 per month. Instead, I've been getting $2,000. Michael's face went pale. Sarah's mouth opened slightly. David leaned forward in his chair. This morning, a judge removed Frank as trustee, and the judge appointed me as the new trustee. I paused, letting that sink in. As of this morning, I have complete control over the family trust. Every asset, every investment, every dollar. The silence in the room was absolute. Your father set up this trust to provide for me during my lifetime. Only after I die is the remainder supposed to pass to the three of you. That was always his intention, to make sure I was taken care of first. Michael found his voice. Mom, that's wonderful news. You deserve to be comfortable. This is great. Is it, Michael? Because this morning, when I called you asking for help with a $247 electricity bill, you told me you couldn't keep bailing me out. You couldn't spare $250, but you can afford 3 vacations to Europe every year and private school tuition and a penthouse apartment. Mom, I didn't know. You didn't know I was desperate? You didn't know I've been struggling? I've been living on $2,000 a month for a year. You've all seen how thin I've gotten. You've noticed my clothes are old and worn. You've seen me decline every invitation to dinner because I couldn't afford it. You knew. You just didn't care. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. We didn't know about Frank stealing from you. You didn't need to know about Frank. You just needed to care that your mother was struggling. You just needed to remember that I spent 40 years taking care of you, sacrificing for you, putting your needs before my own. And when I finally asked for help, not much, just enough to keep the lights on, you all told me to figure it out. If you've been moved by my story so far, please hit that subscribe button. I share real stories from real women, and your support means everything. So here's what's going to happen now, I continued. First, I'm going to start taking a monthly distribution that actually reflects the trust's value. $15,000 a month, maybe 20, enough to live comfortably the way your father intended. That's completely reasonable, David said quickly. You should take whatever you need. I'm not finished. Second, the trust document gives me discretion to make distributions to you 3 during my lifetime if I choose. If I choose. Your father put that in there thinking I might want to help you buy homes or start businesses or deal with emergencies. He trusted me to be generous. They were all staring at me intently now. But generosity is a two-way street, and this morning you all showed me exactly how much generosity I can expect from you. None of you could spare $250 for your mother. Michael said he had to pay for private school tuition and vacations. Sarah said she was renovating her summer house. David said he gives to charity and needs to be strategic. I stood up and walked to the mantel, where I kept a framed photo of Thomas. I touched the frame gently. Your father worked hard his whole life to build security for this family. He wanted me taken care of. He wanted you to have inheritances, but he also raised you to be kind, generous, compassionate people, and you've disappointed him. You've disappointed me. Michael stood up. Mom, please, we made a mistake. We should have helped you. We're sorry. Are you sorry, Michael? Or are you sorry that it turns out I control your inheritance? His face flushed red. Sarah was crying now. Mom, we love you. We were thoughtless, please. Here's my decision, I said. The trust will continue to exist. When I die, whatever is left will be divided among the 3 of you, as your father intended. But until that day, I am not giving any of you a single penny from this trust. Not for down payments, not for tuition, not for business ventures, nothing. Mom, David started, I'm not finished. You all have successful careers. You all make good money. You don't need help from me. And frankly, you don't deserve it. Not after today. That's vindictive, Michael said, his voice hard. No, Michael. Vindictive would be changing the trust to leave everything to charity, which I have the power to do as trustee. I'm not doing that. I'm honoring your father's wishes that you eventually inherit, but I'm also honoring his wishes that I be taken care of, something none of you seem to care about this morning. Sarah wiped her eyes. I understand. We hurt you. We failed you. We're sorry. I appreciate the apology, Sarah. But apologies don't erase the fact that when I was at my lowest point, struggling to keep the electricity on, my own children couldn't be bothered to help. They smirked and told me to figure it out. I walked back to my chair and sat down. There's one more thing. You all suggested that I sell my house, move into a smaller apartment, give up the home where I raised you, where every corner holds memories of your father. Well, I've made a decision about that too. They waited. I'm keeping this house. I'm going to renovate it. New kitchen, new bathrooms, new roof. I'm going to make it exactly what I want it to be. And I'm going to live here comfortably for as long as I'm able. This is my home, and your father bought it for me, and no one is going to pressure me to leave it. Michael's jaw clenched. Sarah looked at the floor. David seemed frozen. Now, I said, standing up, I think this family meeting is over. You all have lives to get back to, tuitions to pay, summer houses to renovate, financial advisors to consult. They got up slowly. Sarah approached me, reaching out to hug me, but I stepped back. Not today, Sarah. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. At the door, David turned back. Mom, I really am sorry. I was awful to you. What I said about the consequences of your choices, that was cruel. Yes, David, it was. Is there anything I can do to make this right? I looked at my youngest son, the little boy who used to crawl into my lap when he had bad dreams, who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them beautiful flowers. You can learn from this, I said quietly. You can remember that money isn't everything, that family matters, that the people who love you and sacrifice for you deserve your respect and kindness. You can be better. He nodded, his eyes wet. I will be, I promise. After they left, I sat in my quiet house. I thought about calling my friend Barbara, telling her everything, but I didn't. I just sat there, holding that trust checkbook, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not triumph exactly, not joy, just peace. The next morning, I paid my electricity bill. Then I made an appointment with Patricia Reynolds, the financial advisor. She was wonderful. Horrified at what Frank had done, eager to help me understand and manage the trust assets properly. I increased my monthly distribution to $18,000. I hired a contractor to renovate my kitchen. I bought new clothes. I went to the dentist and got that root canal. I started buying fresh flowers every week again. And I started donating to charities that help older women in financial distress, women who'd been taken advantage of, women struggling to maintain their dignity and independence. $1,000 a month to a local women's shelter, another $1,000 to a legal aid organization that helps seniors fight financial abuse. It felt good to turn my pain into something that might help others. My children tried to rebuild the relationship. They called weekly, visited monthly, they sent flowers on my birthday, they were attentive and apologetic, and gradually, over time, I softened toward them. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. But I never forgot. And I never changed my decision about the trust. The trust still holds about $7.5 million. It's well managed, growing steadily. When I die, they'll each inherit roughly $2.5 million, minus estate taxes. They'll be fine. They'll have their inheritances, but they'll never forget the day they told their mother to figure it out. The day they chose luxury over compassion. The day they learned that sometimes the person you underestimate is the one holding all the cards. And they'll never forget that their mother, the woman they dismissed, the woman whose sacrifices they devalued, the woman they couldn't spare $250 for, had more dignity, more strength, and more power than they ever imagined. That's my story. That's the day everything changed. And you know what? I sleep better now than I have in years. Not just because I don't worry about money anymore, but because I stood up for myself, because I refused to be dismissed and disrespected by the very people I'd given everything to raise. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well, on your own terms, with your head held high. And that's exactly what I'm doing.